So, we go again. Number 53, the Darkness to Light Godcast. Welcome back again if you're joining me again. And this one, number 53, is going to be called The Way to Help. A very interesting time just now for myself and many of the inner circle within the Vortex, the team, as we go on this next wave. And the intention over the last wee bit has been about, how do we help more people, which has always really been my intention. My intention with this, and I think this is, certainly I see it myself, but I've been aware of it in others as well. When you actually really get it for yourself, and you reach that place you've been seeking for, whatever length of time that was. For me, it was a lifetime. Most of my adult life, trying to reach this place. And when I really got it, then the desire then to kind of give it to others, or at least help others find their way by sharing really what I'd done, to help myself. Everything that I do in terms of the coaching services within the Vortex, which are split into two different halves. There's the personal development side of things, and then there's also the spiritual development side of things. The two of them kind of come together as one within the programme itself, but they are two kind of very different, obviously different skill sets, different intentions, very much, different agenda with them. And for me, over the last 28 years now of working on myself and having been run about some of the best coaches in the world, both personally in terms of people that help me, sometimes week to week, and then some of the kind of world leaders that I was blessed to get run about, whether it was in audio form or through their books, and many of them I met as well and spent time with them. So the way that I'm sharing things now, and where I'm at with this work, and how my intentions now are to help people without, sounds weird, but how do you help somebody without doing it for them, or without the intention to try and help them? That's a really kind of, that's a fine balance. And without really kind of throwing any shade, as they say, on any other ways of doing things, I'm just going to talk about my experiences in terms of what I went through, how I got to this point, what I believe is the best way to do things in terms of how you find your relief, no matter what it is that you're seeking, whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for some sort of coaching or help within this this line of work, in terms of whether it's mental health or physical well-being, or you're looking to better yourself, you're looking to achieve a certain space or place within your life, you're trying to get to somewhere, then coaching is the best way to do it. Finding somebody and seeking somebody out that's done it before you, somebody that knows how to get there. And then traditional coaching and the interpretation of it would be that somebody who's done it is going to help you get to that place that you're trying to get to. Maybe not the exact same place where they're at or where they've been, but the fact that they've done it, then they're sharing and talking from their experience as to how you get there. That's a really important point before I move on. Like, teaching from experience is so vital within this. I know many coaches, I can tell, because I can see what they teach, and they're basically, a lot of the times, they're teaching somebody else's system. So they'll go and see Tony Robbins, or they'll go to whatever, you name them, and they've been to the courses and they've got all the t-shirts, and they've learned the different systems. And there are certain therapies, I suppose, that most traditional therapies, that's how it goes together. It's somebody's idea in terms of something that helps, and then you would go and learn it. NLP would be one. First course I ever did in 1987 was NLP, and Richard Bandler, the one that created it. And that's basically learning like language patterns with the intention of taking somebody in a direction with the best of intentions to help them, but you've taken something that Bandler and John Grinder come up with as well, obviously, and basically what they put together. You would go and learn their system, and then you would teach their system. I know there's loads of different offshoots of NLP, and a long time ago, probably 15 years ago, the last time I looked at it, if I'm honest, but I see it all the time in terms of people being NLP practitioners, and I know there's a whole division in the camp between Bandler and Grinder and all the different people that do it better than them, and all that kind of stuff. But I was there with the source. I learned from the man that created it. So to think that somebody can then take it and make it better, or whatever his interpretation of it was, it was his. But that being said, you're learning a system and you're using somebody else's system to help. And most of the traditional therapies are like that. One of the challenges that I see, with things like life coaching and things that with people that are teaching somebody else's system, is number one, they don't live it. They're basically, they've never done it themselves, or they've never had to do it themselves. If it's like going to somebody that's never suffered from depression, somebody who's never been suicidal, somebody who's never been, that's never had PTSD, they've never been in that place, and yet they're giving you the answers based on what Tony Robbins says, or based on, whoever it is, name the guru, telling you how to get beyond that. That's a challenge for me, because I've no experience, to try and help somebody who's got depression, or somebody who's suicidal, or somebody who suffers from panic attacks, and you've never had them. Then obviously, there's a question needs to go against that. Are you qualified because you've never been through it? Definitely if you've been through it. Definitely if you've got the T-shirt and you've been on that path yourself, and you've found ways that help. And there's something about, obviously, being able to speak to somebody at that level as well. That's something that I definitely have with so many different things, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. The stuff that I've been through, to be, compassion for another human being, and to feel what they've been. But then at the same time, the fact you've been through it yourself, it gives it a whole different level of weight behind it. And as with everything, when you're talking about how, it doesn't matter where you've been or where you started or how bad it was, then if you can offer, the solutions and the pathway out of that, then that's obviously the best way to do it. So to teach from experience is important. To live it and be an authentic teacher is hugely important. I remember a long time ago, I heard this more than once, but the amount of times where a well-known coach that I knew was offering like dietary advice, and given the illusion that they were living with this dietary advice, so they were selling all the juices and the living, the healthy living and everything that goes with that, and at the same time, and when I remember seeing them and seeing the condition of them, they obviously weren't living it, but a lot of their students at the time were under the impression that they were living the same kind of strict regime in terms of dieting, using the diet, blending and juicing and all that kind of stuff as what they were selling, and it's quite funny when I remember seeing them, and they obviously weren't, because of the size of them. And there's something about teaching something and living it and coming from that place. Again, it carries so much more weight. So the vortex itself and the way I do it has evolved over the years. It's been very much. I started like that, when I got into this at the very beginning. I was blessed by some fantastic teachers and a life coach right at the very beginning. I used to see him very often for one reason or another, and that would be sometimes every week, sometimes more often, not always for coaching, but normally seeking advice or like a sounding board. And I remember years and years and years that went on for, and I learned so much along the way. And at the same time, we were on a similar path and a similar journey, the personal development stuff, and then when I kind of split and get more into the spiritual development stuff, there was a lot of time where you just be talking about the journey and making sense of it. It's really important when you're on this path of self-improvement and taking responsibility and try to better yourself. It's really important to get around about people that are doing the same stuff, because number one, the old pals and the old ways of living and being, a lot of the times when you start to get around about this, then they conversations, you can't have them with your original circle, whether it's family members or whether it's your friends or the people you would normally spend time with. When you start to get around about this, it's different now. Back in the day when I got into it, there was nobody doing it. It was probably one or two people that I was really grateful for, because I could speak to them about it and I could make sense of stuff. When I started to get into spiritual work, that became a wee bit trickier, and I didn't really have anybody to talk about it, because I was doing it myself, and I was seeking that union with God, and nobody would really have understood, I think, the level of work I was putting into it every single day. It became almost like a full-time job at one point, but certainly a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours every single morning, 3-4 o'clock in the morning, almost every single night sitting in meditation, changing the diet, changing, my input in terms of what I was reading and who I was spending time with and what I was thinking about, and, being really devotional to that, desire to be or experience enlightenment and that divinity that was inside of me. There was nobody I could really talk to about that, because nobody else was doing it. Latterly, and I've got one man now who probably is a sounding board, who has been on a similar path to myself. He's a great friend and I suppose, a teacher of mine in many different ways, more as a sounding board than looking for direct advice, which he would never give me anyway, and I think that's the right way to do it. You need to work it out for yourself, but certainly the way that I've learned from him has by his example, and given examples of the way he's done things without actually saying this is what you need to do. So very interesting, and which is the best way to learn. That's the way to do it. The thing with coaching and trying to help others, one of the biggest challenges that I've always faced is when somebody tells you what to do. When somebody says to you, this is exactly what you need to do. And you see that with life coaches every day. You turn on anywhere online and they're telling you how you need to live your life and the changes you need to make, and that might work for some people, and for people who are really struggling, who are not in the best of places, then I suppose that level of certainty would be beneficial in the beginning. But once you start to get into it, and once you actually understand, where is it you're trying to get to? That's the biggest question, what you're trying to achieve with it. And for me, it's mastery of the self, mastery of the lower self and the higher self. So if that becomes a goal, then obviously the level of the teacher that you're learning from, it's amazing the amount of teachers that are transcended beyond. When I basically found, even in the great teachers at world level, when I really got to a place when I'd read everything and been about them long enough and got their system with every single one of them, at some point you've had enough and it's time to move on. There's maybe only the teachers that I still listen to, that I learn from just now would be Dr. Hawkins is definitely one of them. His take on the spiritual stuff and levels of consciousness and the meaning of things in terms of how you calibrate truth from falsehood and that kind of stuff. I learn from him absolutely. For by him, and a long time ago, I gave up the learning, I gave up the books, and I gave up the teachers, and everything that I've done since the Vortex opened has been, I've had influence from other teachers because of, the previous probably 18 years where I learned, I was basically learning how it went together. But for the last 10 years, everything that I do in terms of the stuff that I'm putting out there, the poems certainly, but also the programme itself, and the lessons that I share with people in terms of what helps people, a high percentage of that is mine. That's came through me. That's original to me. And there are some things in there, the breath work, obviously, functional breathing through, my teachers with breath work. Patrick McFadyen was one of them, so top of the tree, absolute master, world level, the best in the world, I would say, about, functional breathing, how you're supposed to breathe. So the functional breathing that I teach comes from him. But the intentional breath that I share, once we use the functional breathing to calm the nervous system and all that kind of stuff, then the intentional breath is mine. That's again something that's came through me, through inspiration and meditation. Cold exposure is the same. I learned from Wim Hof and did that for a couple of years and learned how to do it, and then learned how not to do it. In terms of what I believe was wrong practices, in terms of what I was seeing, also within my own practice as well. And evolved that as well, to the point where, cold exposure becomes really easy and you don't need to spend 30-40 minutes lying down blowing your brains out with stress and breathing and all that kind of stuff to go and sit in an ice bath. There's different ways of doing it. There's an evolution of that, so I got everything I really needed from that with my own practice thousands of times over years and years. And then, started to realise that it wasn't working the way that it was when I got into it, and then it evolved into a practice where, like, how can I make this really easy so that anybody can do it? And it's one breath now, and it's an intention, and it's a reason and the why, and you get in, and there's no jumping about, and there's no, hooing and hawing and all that kind of stuff. It's again, what's your reasons, what's your why? And if you get strong enough reasons, strong enough why, then the benefit you'll get from it and what you can actually receive from that practice, that all came from evolution of what I was doing myself, and how that way of having to take 40 minutes in a minute in the morning time to breathe, or 20 minutes, whatever it was, to do all those rounds of breathing, and the detrimental effect the stress was having on me, like too much stress, like blowing my brains out literally with breath holes, and then changing all of that and making it a lot more gentler and softer and easier, because that's where I was. So now the way that I teach cold exposure is my way of teaching cold exposure. So there's always an evolution of it. And the traditional therapies and the way that most people do things, you look at the life coaching, you look at the talking therapies, somebody's looking for help, if they manage to get past the National Health Service and they dodge that bullet, then they get into the kind of the professional world, in terms of people that are available to help them. This is my experience, and this is the challenges that I see with it, and I see it almost everywhere. It's very difficult because most of the thing you're trying to get to, first and foremost for me, it was for healing. That's why I got around about this work, was to heal myself, So mental health challenges, absolutely, really struggling, really kind of know well, trying to make peace with a lot of stuff from all different stages of my life. And, talking about it is normally the kind of starter for 10, where you need to go in and see what it is you're trying to fix, isn't it? Excuse me. You need to, I say get it up, get it out, and then we replace it. But in the initial stages, you're trying to identify. So the awareness to see, number one, that something's not right, and then, okay, what is it that's causing the issue? What is it that I need to fix? What is it the challenges that I'm facing? And certainly with mental health, when you go in and you start to look at, okay, the symptoms will manifest in a certain way, so whether it's anxiety or depression or overwhelming or suicidal, but there's always a source to that. There's always something that causes that. That can be a lifetime ago, can be probably lifetimes ago when you get into that kind of stuff, but certainly in this lifetime there's normally a significant or a series of significant events that would cause you to, be altered or separated, as I say, that separation game, separated from how you're meant to be. And then over the course of your life experience and the choices that you make from that point, which may happen, that long ago and at an unconscious level that you can't even remember it, or it might have happened and you've completely blacked it out, but what you become because of that experience, and the way your behaviours and how you live your life manifests as a result of that experience, then at a certain point further down the road, by the time you get to, the decimation or the addiction or, whatever it is that you're dealing with, and the reality that would create, then once that stops and you get to, if you do get the chance to stop and have a look at yourself and go, right, okay, what is this? Why did I get here? Why did I get to burnout? Why did I get to, having a breakdown, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, a nervous breakdown? What caused that? What is the source of that? So straight away, I'm always looking for the source, right away. It doesn't matter what people are coming in with. It's like, what's the source? What is it that actually caused this? Because that's where the real healing takes place. You need to fix the source of it. And that's a challenge, for most therapies, because they can't do that. Certainly in my experience, what I saw on almost every single one of them, they can talk about the trauma. So if you identify the trauma in terms of what happened, you can go back and you can relive the traumas, you can think about your childhood and whatever it is that happened, and who wronged you and who broke you and all that kind of stuff. But that is where way too much time is spent, and what you find is if you're repeating that story over and over again, I know people that have been going to therapy for 4 and 5 years. I knew people, or I have worked with people that have been going to therapies for that length of time, some of them even longer, some of them decades, in one or two instances. And what you find is with these talking therapies, they talk about the same stuff every single week. They talk about like reliving the trauma. I had a person not that long ago, and the therapist was basically making them relive the experience to try and get it out of their system. And the question was, how's it gone for you? After you've been doing that for a year, and they couldn't even remember like where they started with it, but they certainly knew that where they were at this point. After week after week after week, and paying good money, I think it was like 60 quid a session for an hour every single week. Over the course of a year, that's a lot of money. But it's like, well, if that had worked and you were beyond it and you were feeling great and you dealt with it. But the question and the answer, the question's always like, how's it going? With anything, how are you finding it? How's it been? Like, what's your experiences with it? Are you getting to that place that you're trying to get to? And this person couldn't even remember what they were trying to get to. It had been so long and so traumatic. And in fact, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And that's the bit that I hear every single time. When you talk about it and you relive it, if you don't know how to let it go and get beyond it and then replace it, if you're just doing the same stuff every single time, every single session, then obviously that gets worse and worse. Abraham Hicks used to talk about, whatever you shine a light on gets bigger. Whatever you put your attention on, whatever you put your focus on, then obviously, and the thing about the way the body works and the way your unconscious mind and your conscious mind, the way they kind of work with each other, when you're creating a situation or an experience that happened to you a long time ago, and a lot of times because of whatever reason you can't remember. So again, the unconscious mind can make bits up, and it can make it a lot worse. It can make it easier as well, but it can make it a lot worse. The bits that you don't know, you can fill in the gaps, and the conscious mind is always looking for an answer. So then you can go in all these different scenarios where you're basically trying to like make sense of stuff. And what you find is, and what we know, when you actually relive that experience, so when you go back and you relive a childhood trauma, and especially if that trauma has been horrific, then you're literally reliving it. The chemistry within your body, the unconscious mind does not know what's the difference between if it's real or it isn't. So you're literally creating the stress hormones and the stress response as if it's happening to you. So if you were abused as a child and you're reliving it, with the best of intentions from the therapist, to try and get yourself beyond it, and you're reliving that experience and you're going over it in your mind and you're going through the situation and who was involved in it and the pain that you felt and the suffering, then every single cell in your body, the chemistry that's being produced within your body, the fear and the anxiety and the trauma and the everything that comes with that, you're literally reliving it because it becomes real. The unconscious mind believes it to be real because you're basically playing that picture and telling that story and going through it in your mind. And literally torturing yourself, and obviously going in the wrong direction. And this is one of the big challenges that I see we talk in therapies. We talk about the problem, but what is the solution? Always, what's the solution? How do you get beyond it? I believe there's only one time to tell your story. And I'm going to jump in and out of this a wee bit in terms of the way that I do things and how that differs from it. I give people the opportunity to tell me their story once. And because if you're recreating the story and you're constantly telling the story over and over again, it's exactly what Abraham says. You're basically you're reigniting that vibration and you're reliving it. And when you're reliving it and you're creating that chemistry within your body, a lot of people, you start digging that hole, and many people don't ever get out of it, because all of a sudden they look up and it's like, fuck, how did we get here? And it's just because they've been telling the same story over and over again with no answers, no solutions, and no way out. There's no secret tunnel at the bottom of the pit that's going to get you to the other side back towards the light. That doesn't happen, because you're just telling the same thing over and over again. So again, the solution needs to be there in some way, shape or form. I believe there's a time to tell your story. To identify what the problem is huge. One of the first things I'll ask people is like, right, okay, is there any significant event? Is there anything you've been through? And it can be really kind of trivial stuff that can cause trauma, especially in those first kind of 7 years, that stage of your consciousness and the way your brain, the level and the kind of the frequency that your brain, that theta level of brain frequency in terms of how you learn. It's like a state of like hypnosis, literal hypnosis, where you're learning how to survive in your environment. So when something happens in that stage and in that in that level of mind, that can be a literal program. That doesn't need to be that bad, but it can basically change and alter your behaviour for the rest of your life. So to go back and try and find the problem, that is important. And if you identify the problem, then fantastic. And then, like, how do you get beyond it? What's the solution? Like, what's the, how do you transcend it? And that's a challenge I've got with almost every therapy, every talking therapy, all the kind of life coaching, talking about where you're at and how bad it is and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, how do you get beyond it? What are the ways to get beyond it? And not just get beyond it in terms of being able to live with it, but how do you transcend it? How do you get to that place of like complete transcendence where you get to the other side of it? And eventually you get to be in a place where you realise that, the fact that it did happen and the fact that you're still here and you're okay, and the lessons that have been learned from it and the person you became from it, then nothing really is in vain. I say that all the time. There's nothing in vain with this stuff. The journey of the soul and who you're becoming, and the expansion that comes through all of the stuff, the pain and the suffering and the contrast. I think of my own story and how grateful I am because of what I went through. Because if I hadn't been through all that stuff, the childhood stuff and then the vaccine stuff and the Fitbit stuff and then the Ibiza stuff with the decimation and almost losing my life, and then eventually like finding this, like personal development into spiritual development, I think back to every single bit of it, and there's so many different bits over the course of my life I would have changed, absolutely. But where I feel where I'm at now and I see and the life that I'm living in terms of like how I'm able to, get it for myself and what I've achieved within myself in this lifetime, and then what I'm able to like help others with, in terms of finding their own relief and their own healing. If I hadn't been through every single bit of that, I wouldn't be qualified to do that, so you get to see it from a different level, you get to see it from a different perspective, and you start to realise, that there is nothing in vain, and the stories that you've lived and the kind of, the challenges that you've been through, the pain and the suffering, Jim Rohn used to say, like, let your story be an example instead of a warning, you know. So if you get beyond it and you transcend it, you get the other side of it, then you can actually start to share with people a different way of doing things, and that's very much what this is all about for me, you know. So the talking about it therapies, biggest thing I've seen, one of the biggest challenges and the things that I've seen within those the kind of 12-step groups is, you know, people telling about, you know, who they used to be. And the people they've hurt and how horrible they were and the pain and the suffering. I remember sitting in one where I actually went to help. I did a presentation and I taught some breath work how to manage the nervous system, and I've only been in one of those groups. My very first session ever when I come back from Ibiza, and I was really not well. The place that I was signed into it was based on the 12 steps, and I'd never even heard it before. Since then I know all about it, and through Wayne Dyer and looking into it, and over the years I've had very many 12-step groups that have a go at me, and there's reasons why, you know, that I believe that the intention with it is absolutely fantastic. I believe, you know, when it came through back in the 1930s, which is like nearly 100 years ago, I believe it was you know, it was the timing of it in terms of the language and the way that it came through Bill W. It was perfect for the times. The challenge I've had since I've known about it, first from my own experience, both in that first session I was in, you know, people standing up and telling you what was wrong with them. First thing I ever saw, you know, people they were like naming themselves as whatever their addiction was, and then when I've helped on 2 different occasions, and I've held space on 2 different occasions within those groups, then, you know, the big challenge that I see is like people telling their stories, people reliving their stories, and really significantly, more than once, like the milk, you know, and the kind of juice that people get out of telling these stories, you know, and they can't see it. And one being in particular, I called out for it, like, because all he was talking about was, you know, the addiction and who he was and what he'd done, and it was really kind of, it was, in some way, shape or form, it was feeding his ego, and he couldn't see it. And I asked him, you know, I called him out on it. The basic question was, can you see what you're getting out of this story that you're telling, and the significance, and the people shining the light on you, and people kind of giggling and laughing about him because he was making funny at the situation. It wasn't funny. You know, so when I called him out on it, he actually left not long after that, which wasn't my intention. I was hoping he was going to stick around about and hopefully seek, you know, a different way of doing it, because the way he was doing it wasn't working. But certainly the juice that he was getting out of it, you know, by talking about it and reliving it, and what people were feeding him, again, their ignorance, they didn't know. So when you're talking about it and you're reliving it and you're kind of glorifying it, again, that's a huge challenge. The problem and the solution are 2 different places. You know, talking about it and bringing it up and reliving it and identifying where it is, that's really the starter for 10. That's where the kind of, I suppose, the work that I'm doing within here and how I like to do things in terms of how helping people to get beyond stuff. Once we get it up and we identify it, you know, we need to get it out. We need to get it out the body. We need to get it up and get it, kind of let it go, and that can be a literal experience where people can, you know, go through. This is where breathwork is so important and really significant. There's something about breathwork when you go in with the correct intentions, and you take people through that really profound experience of, like, for the first time ever, possibly, that they're going inside and they're switching off their head, and they're generating stress within their breath, and they're pressurising, you know, different systems within the body, particularly the brain, which is obviously the control centre. But when people, you know, get that dump of chemistry into their brain, and the stress gets released, and then they experience peace of mind, and they start to experience the gaps, and then they get into their unconscious mind when you're guiding them into the unconscious processes, then when you start to find that space, then what I find almost every single time is they will then find whatever it is that's causing it. You'll get to the source very, very quickly. And that's obviously what we're looking for. We're trying to get to the source. We're trying to actually find what it is. This isn't a Band-Aid. I think a lot of the therapies are like Band-Aids. Back in the day, I remember that was like elastoplast. Every single week, you would go in and you would bump your gums for half an hour, and it would be the same solution as last week in terms of what you had to do to make yourself feel better. But there was no ever getting beyond it. With many different kind of things that I tried. It never ever got to a place where I felt like, I'm making progress and I'm moving forward. It was always like you're the drowning man, where you're going from there to there every week, and then by the time it came around to the next Tuesday or Wednesday, a week later, you were back up to kind of there again. So that obviously is it's a great business model. Again, if you've been seeing the same life coach for years and years and years, and you think they're great, the question would be like how good are they? What are you getting from it? How are you getting beyond it if you're still seeing the same person with the same conversations and there's no real progress? And at that point, and this is where people, they need that kind of stuff. I remember needing that as well. I can remember like loving that, like just going in and for that hour, just letting it all go. Just like not like looking forward to it and really kind of. Like, again, I suppose that feeds into like, giving away your power and almost like victim consciousness where somebody else is going to fix it for you. And that's a significant point, that when you get into these therapies, you're basically giving away your power and you're handing it over to somebody else that's going to do it for you. I think that's why there is that direct debit and there's that 50, 60 quid every single week or however often it is, because for that period of time, you don't need to deal with yourself, and then somebody else is going to give you their answers, which might not even be their answers, might be getting it from somebody else. But for that period of time, you're in a place where there's more certainty than they have got or you have got, because of you're the one that's struggling. But you get to hand it over to somebody, and for that period of time, then they're giving you the answers to that. Which is again, that's a really difficult thing. It's actually not difficult. It's quite simple. The fact that anybody can give you direct advice as to what you need to do, even if it worked for them and they live it themselves every single day, that's another huge challenge I've got. When somebody gives you direct, this is what you need to do, this is what's going to fix it. Who's to say? It's certainly not them. They're not to say because of what worked for them. It's like the kind of one brush stroke fits absolutely everything. I remember Tony Robbins talking about, first time I saw him, and I've trained with Robbins 7 times over the years, so I'm fairly well versed in everything he does. I did every single one of his courses, more or less, from Business University to Date with Destiny in Palm Springs, 6 days with him, which is that's his top course. The other one is on the island in Fiji. I didn't go to that, I didn't have the money for that, and glad I missed that, but after hearing people that had been to it and dropping, putting 6 figures, investing in them and all that kind of stuff, or the sales stuff that came with Tony Robbins was brutal. But the ultimate success formula that you learn, the very first course I did was the Unleash the Power Within, which was fantastic, changed my life. It was brilliant. I used to I had a fairly decent sized business at one point. I'd take my staff down there, we'd get maybe half a dozen tickets or a dozen tickets. We'd go down to London, and myself and Jill would go down, but I'd seen them 3 or 4 times and it was the same stuff every time. And the first time was fantastic. It was life changing. The firewalk and state management and really a lot of stuff I learned just changed my life. It was fantastic, in the beginning. But when you go back the second time, and it's the exact same jokes and it's the exact same, a lot of the kind of stories and how they do it, and certainly the sales behind it, you start to see behind the curtain and see behind the veil, and you see that obviously it's an act. No denying his results or what he does with people, and fair play to him, the amount of people he's helped across the world. But the ultimate success from him, when I came back, know what you want, take massive action, don't stop until you get there, all the fire and the anchors, all that kind of stuff. I remember coming back and they sign you up with a mentor the first time you go there, and I almost spent 10 grand that I didn't have. My first ever Tony Robbins course, I was so close. I had the credit card in hand and I was ready to sign my life up to him. I felt that good and I felt so empowered. It was like the perfect sales pitch. And the years that I went after that, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how gullible was I? How just the hook was in, and I was so into it. But I remember the first time when I was so close to signing up, and they assigned you a coach or a mentor. So some American dude, the minute you're back, your phone's ringing, and they don't let you off the hook. And this is before emails were probably a thing back then, but certainly not the way it is just now in terms of the kind of market and the macro market with social media and emails, all that kind of stuff. It was mostly a phone call you would get. And I remember being on the phone to this American, and after about a minute and a half, I'm just thinking, fuck this. This is too hard. This is so. Fine, we're in that environment with 10,000 people, but you go back to your own house, and the stuff that they're asking you to do, in terms of how you need to behave, it's just not in line with your nature. And thinking back now and I know some people are still teaching that system, the ultimate success formula, know what you want, fucking take massive action, don't stop until you get there, all that kind of stuff. And it's that was 27 years ago I saw that, and now in these times, and especially I now know about motivation and how hard that is and how it's so unsustainable and how it doesn't work, then, it's one of the things where when somebody's telling you what to do, somebody's giving you direct advice of the way to do it, that's a red flag for me. That's something that, because you've got a guidance system inside you and everybody's different. And this is where the Vortex system is very different. I'm very much about self-reliance and empowering people. And getting to that place where I say often that your life experience is going to be your greatest teacher. How you navigate your way through your life, whether it's for personal development and kind of mastery of the lower self, whether it's spiritual development and mastery of the higher self, then your life experience and what you're doing to yourself and the lessons you're getting every single day, that's absolutely going to be your greatest teacher. And so to take what somebody else thinks, especially coming from that intellectual level of mind, and the fact that many times they only teach one or two things and there's one brush stroke that fits everything, then that's obviously a challenge. And the question is always the same, how's it going? How does it work? How's it working for you? Are you getting beyond it? Are you finding your relief? Are you finding your healing? Are you reaching that place that you're trying to get to? Because it's so easy. Human beings are so lazy, and it's so easy to get into a habit of going to the same place every single week and getting a band-aid and somebody doing it for you and giving away your power and feeling better for that hour, that period of time. And then over the next couple of days, as I used to feel, you would feel great when you left. And then the next day it would be you just starting to, then you could feel yourself. But 2 or 3 days after, you couldn't wait for the next session. And that's obviously, that's one way to do things, but we never ever get beyond it. So the traditional way of doing it, the temporary fix, the band-aid, many times, somebody else's system, no real transcendence or healing. That's something that I think I know there's a different way of doing it, there's a better way of doing it. And that's what I believe, and in fact I know that I'm doing within the Vortex, this system that we teach. And it's really interesting, at this point we're at just now, where the desire is to help as many people as possible, the desire is to help the world get back on its feet. And that isn't easy, it really isn't. People, it's not that people don't want to be helped. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but in my experience of it, it's like, when people go in about this, a lot of people don't know what it is, they don't understand what it is. And I think this bit we're in just now, I've given up trying to give it to people, I've given up trying to sell it. The traditional ways of doing things and getting people in about it, so the advertising on the socials and trying to forcefully take this to the world, I don't think that's ever worked once for us. I really don't. I don't think we've ever had somebody that saw it online and get on about it and was blown away or dazzled with the information I was putting out online or the inspiration I was basically showing in terms of what we're doing, and then came on about it and stuck that way. It's never ever worked like that. It's always been organic. I always believed that this work and what I'm doing here, it attracts a kind of really specific type of person. The vibration always attracts, so the words and the stuff that I'm putting out, the socials, that's just to kind of share what I'm doing, and hopefully leave the breadcrumbs that anybody who is seeking, try to find relief or trying to find some healing on whatever level, then they will find that. That's absolutely the intention with it. But to get around about it and to understand what it is and why it's different from all that stuff, a lot of people don't even realise I'm a coach. A lot of people think obviously I'm doing the breathwork and the cold exposure, I'm doing the meditation stuff and I'm posting online. But, essentially I'm a coach. That's what I do. That's my favourite work, is basically helping people, especially one-on-one. And for what reason? Dead simple, because this way of doing things and this way of being and living and these tools and techniques, they make better and they fix every single thing that they touch, no matter what it is. And other night we were having a conversation. One of the lads has just done an incredible breakthrough this week, and he was talking about how at the stage and age that he's at in his life, he's getting on a wee bit. He's not quite where I'm at yet, but he's getting on a wee bit. And he was talking about how it's taken him almost 4 decades to get to this point of, in his words, which was beautiful, he's learning how to become a human being. Which feeds into Greg Braden's stuff just now, pure human, talking about what it actually means to be a human being, a proper human being. And his own journey in terms of what he's been through in his lifetime, way back to childhood and all the stuff that he's been through, similar to myself in many ways. And all the different paths and the journey he's been on, and the pain and the suffering and the decimation and the heartbreak and the heartache and the stuff that he's missed because he's been in a survival state most of his life, to get to this place now where he is really kind of, I suppose, embracing, this this new way of living. Truth was a big thing that came through for him, living in the truth and living this way of living and being the authentic self. And at the beginning, it kind of felt like there's a real sadness that comes with that. I remember this morning experience I remember the day that I realised that every single thing that I knew was basically a fucking lie. The world, in terms of how the world is set up and the way that it's controlled, and all the stuff you're led to believe in terms of the media and the music and the news and the politicians and the circus, as I call it, that zoo, and how the whole thing's a lie. And then you get to experience the truth and be in the truth and be in the light through the spiritual practices. And it's the exact same for him. It's the spiritual practices that have got him there. The deep internal, that quest, that devotional quest for answers and solutions and to transcend the stuff that he's been through. And right at the beginning, exact same with myself, there was a real sadness in terms of like what has cost you in this lifetime, the things that you've missed. I talk with myself often about what my family have had to give up. Maybe they're not even aware of it, and I've spoken about it to them. My kids are 23 and 21 now, and I've apologised many times about what me not being there in body, but at the same time you're working on this deep stuff and healing yourself, the stuff that I was healing myself from at the time. Many times you're in a different world and you're there in body, but you're certainly not there present in any way, shape or form. You're just kind of making your way through it in a kind of almost like a hypnosis, and that can be really sad, when you think what you've missed. But for me, to even reach that point in this lifetime, again, the journey of the soul, that bit that you're trying to get, doesn't matter when you get it in this lifetime. We did a thing last year, the tour of Scotland. I think it was Fern said, we're doing it here, and there was a load of elderly ladies there. There's a lot of money in there, a lot of retired, healthy, wealthy looking people. And there was a group of elderly ladies who were probably in their 70s and their 80s. And they came down for the kind of, was it Reset and Reconnect tour that I did, and I took them through some breathing, and you could just see what happened. And they were very vocal at the end of it. They came up and they were like, "Oh my God, like what was that?" And I can't believe it's taken me this long to all that kind of chat, and which is brilliant. And we're in Michael and Fern's RV at the end of it, and Fern was a wee bit sad in terms of, like, oh man, like imagine like getting to that stage in your life, and that's the first time you get this. That's the first time where you actually wake up, and you'd be able to turn your head off, turn your nervous system off, like no the ability to not think, being out of your head, to get back into your heart, to feel the goodness and that's inside you, and to remember what it feels like to feel good and all this kind of stuff. And very quickly, it was like, for me, the journey of the soul is the most important part. The human experience, and the many, how many lifetimes before, we don't know. And hopefully too many lifetimes after this. I'm hoping this is my last one. But the journey of the soul towards enlightenment and direct experience of the divine, as long as you get it in this lifetime, then it doesn't matter. And very often, almost always, the things that you've had to go through, without them happening, then when you get to this place where you've then, found the pain and the suffering through the stuff that's happened to you, and you reach that place of like needing to do the work. I love it when somebody's fucking broken. I love it when somebody's letting the bones of their arse, whether it's through addiction or decimation, whatever it is that's happened to them, because the journey of the soul and then the fuel for the fire that's required to go on this bit of the path, this bit of the journey, and really get it, to experience that bit that I would call enlightenment, then I've never ever seen it once that anybody ever gets there properly. Maybe once, I'm thinking of somebody now who's done it in a different way, but again they've had their own pain and suffering that came up during a ceremony, so very interesting. But there's normally like a fall for grace. There's normally something really significant that happens that provides you the fuel for the fire to then go on this devotional journey, to seek the truth and to seek the light. Normal people, if you're in that kind of grey area where you've never really been through that much and life's okay and it's alright and you're quite comfortable and you're kind of in hypnosis with the world and you're the trappings of success and the stuff and all that kind of thing, then they're never going to do this. They're never going to do this work that's required to get to that place that we're talking about. So I see that as a celebration, the fact that he has got it in this lifetime, at the young age that he is, just going into his 40th year. The fact that he's got it now, and he's got it forever now. He's experienced it now, and that he's got it over the course of this life, and previous lifetimes as well, no doubt. But to be here and now, and to be standing in the truth, to be standing as, what does it mean to be a real human being, a proper human being, like a full human being? Then none of it has been in vain. Every single bit of it has been absolutely perfect. So the journey of the soul, nothing ever in vain. You know, the pain and the suffering that we go through, when you have the awareness, and you understand how this goes together. Awareness is a starter for 10. You know, when people come in here, and that's the question all the time, like, what do you do? How does it go together? What is the vortex? What is the work that you do? How do you get on about it? You know, is it for me? How does it go together? And this is where it's very, very different for me. This is where it's very different in terms of how I do it. And it's probably taken to this time for me to realise, you know, and especially what we've now got, what we've created with the programme, it's really simple for me now to explain like who it's for, you know, how I do it, how you can get on about it, and then like going forward in terms of longevity. If you're really trying to get to that place that's available to you to fulfill your potential in this lifetime, then there's an absolute path to do that. You know, so what does it make better? In my experience, it fixes every single thing that it touches. Really specifically, you know, the stuff that can't be fixed. That's been, I suppose, I'm not going to say my niche, but the things that come in here, that you talk about the sexual traumas and the sexual abuse and the heavy PTSDs, you know, people that have been broken, you know, people have been through nervous breakdowns and, you know, mental breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, and life is really like the decimation, the heavy addictions, you know, whether it's cocaine or whether it's heroin, alcohol, gambling, sex, like you name it, you know, addiction's all the same thing to me. And again, I've got the t-shirt for just about every single one of them, you know, in terms of I've been through them all in my own life experience. So the coaching services within the vortex and how I do it and how we get beyond that, there's really nothing that comes my way that, you know, it doesn't matter what it is, because I know there's a way to get beyond it. I know there's a way to find your healing. That was a conversation that we had the other night when he had this realisation, you know, about like the stuff that he'd been through and how the pain and the suffering, but then the light, you know, when I kind of switched it around and it was like, well, this is a time for celebration. Like, look where you're standing now. You've been through all that, but it doesn't matter where you've been or who you are, you know, where you were. It's like this right here and right now, and then who you're going to become in the course of this lifetime. That's what it's all about. And there's that thing, and this is what I shared with him and the group. When somebody picks the phone up, when somebody phones me up and I pick the phone up, there's something about it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter to me like how dark, how like the sadness, the decimation, the desperation. Many times, you know, people just, it's like there's no way that this is going to be fixed because I've tried everything. They've been to the therapist, I've been to the life coach, and it's like for me, and the certainty of knowing it doesn't matter what you're picking up the phone with, what you're looking to come in with. It doesn't matter what it is, you know, how bad it is, where you've been, how low, how dark, how that level of like hopelessness or it doesn't matter. The decimation, it doesn't matter, you know, because this work, when you get on about it and you understand what it is, we help to get up, you know, so the healing process, absolutely, you know, to get it up and to get it out, the identification of what it is that you've actually been through. But then it's all about transcendence there, it's all about getting beyond it, you know, and that's where, you know, as I said to him, like, how good is that going to feel when somebody picks the phone up to you? Because see, as a teacher, there's no question about it, there are so many running about this just now, running about the vortex and this mission and this community we're doing together. There are so many teachers, and every single one of them, it's because of life experience. And by being in the programme and on the programme and living this way for some of them a number of years now, and really getting to the point where they're mastering themselves with the work every single day, to get to a point where no matter who comes your way, when you can actually stand up and say, I have been through that, and here is what I did, and this is the way that I did it, and the certainty and the truth and these kind of universal principles, tools and techniques that are, anybody can use them. You know, you're talking about the really kind of basic awarenesses and the power of intention and, you know, being in alignment with the divine. There's some basic fundamentals that we bring in as a kind of a playbook for your life. But then your life is your teacher. You know, everybody's blessed with free will, so everybody does it in a different way. You know, so that's why when somebody says to you, this is how you do it, like, nah, fuck that doesn't work. Everybody's different. You know, the program itself, when you actually get into it, it's all about self-reliance. It's all about using your own guidance system. It's all about putting a smile on your face. It's all about being happy. So who can tell you how to do that? And this is where everybody's different. This is where that free will of human beings comes into it. So the program itself is learning the fundamentals, the basics to master the low self, which would be the personal development stuff. The kind of ego mind, the ego level of mind, the kind of the gym. This level of the human beingness. So the breath work. The relaxation, the meditation, obviously cold exposure, heat exposure, basic awarenesses, what you're doing to yourself, how you sleep, how you eat, who you're spending time with, what you're thinking about, the poisons, the toxicity you're surrounded by, whether it's the Wi-Fi or whether it's the food you're putting into your mouth. There are basic awarenesses, that people don't have. And it's quite funny, a lot of times I believe and I feel that everybody's got this and they don't. People are in hypnosis, people are in ignorance, they just don't know. So when they come in and to have a real kind of snapshot of like that question, like my wife's been trying to answer for the last 25 years, what does it do? You need to experience it. You can't, words cannot do it justice. The website is just about to get completely, I'm going to go through the website very shortly and make it a lot more general and a lot more simple because words do not do it justice. I spent so much time on that website, every single word, and trying to make it perfect. And it doesn't do it justice, so anybody that's coming in, the best way to do it is to experience it. The best way to get around about it, if you are looking, no matter what it is, whether it's anxiety, depression, broken, all the heavy stuff that can't be fixed, from entry level stuff like panic attacks and anxiety, all the way up to kind of suicide and, like heavy addictions. Doesn't matter what it is, you need to experience this to understand what it is that we're doing here. So that first session, and the way that I now do it, I think the best way to people to get the most out of it, and certainly for me, investing in people as well, because I've put my heart and my soul into this. So that first session can be 2.5 to 3 hours. And I've always said I've got the worst business model in the world. It's one session. I see people for one session and that's it. It's not a direct debit. You don't need to come back every single week. I don't want to see people every single week. My model and the way that I do things is I teach them the fundamentals, I teach them the basics, I give them the experience on that first session. I call the first session Reset and Reconnect. So, walking in, stress, tension, can't sleep, inflammation, suicidal, addiction, whatever it is, whatever you're coming in with, broken, the world has broken, you've been separated from the true self. The first session is reset and reconnect. It's a reconnection process. And in that first session, what happens is people remember through direct experience the power that they carry inside of them. That's where the magic happens. That's where this is so powerful and so significant. Because when you're in that low state, when you're in that state of survival, when you're in that state of being broken, where you have no answers and life is getting worse and worse every single day, and you're literally creating your own reality with that stuff, the worse you're thinking and the heavier your thoughts are and the kind of more your expectations of things going wrong, then obviously things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. So that first session is almost like it's like that Mack truck, it's like getting hit with a bus. We're basically like, everybody, like, stop, this isn't working, the way you're doing things isn't working, so stop. And then once we get people to stop, once I take them through that process of the breath work and the relaxation, and then absolutely into the meditation, like explaining what it is that I'm doing, because a lot of people, I get it, a lot of people think I'm off my nut with this stuff, I get that. The language that I use, they don't understand. I use words like consciousness and, the way and the divine mind and even God, people got religion, straight away they're onto it. And anybody that knows me, that's the last thing in the world I'm talking about. The God that I'm talking about is source energy that we carry inside every single one of us. Now, when you get round about that and explain it in a way that anybody can understand, I've never had one person go, you know what, that's all the shite, because it's the truth. And people recognise the truth, no matter what level of consciousness they're at. When you speak, the information and the inspiration that comes through me in terms of how I've learned this and my own experience of it, when you speak for that place, it's the truth, and people recognise the truth. But always, it's right, okay, right, it's all right for you. I've always been aware of that. It's like, okay, you understand it and you've got it and fucking great for you, what about me? And that's where you need to experience it. And that's where this is very different. And this is where it doesn't matter who's coming in or what you're coming in with. That very first session, you will reconnect and you will remember the power that's inside your heart and the power that's inside your soul. That divine light, that divine essence, that divine presence you brought into this world, that's the reconnection process. And at that point, the whole world changes. Everything changes. You take back your power, so you no longer become a victim. You live your life in a different way. You have a massive shift in consciousness in terms of your awareness and your experience of what is reality. So you're in the lower states of survival and stress and, like fucking woe is me and this can't get any worse. And it can get worse, I know, because I used to dig the holes for myself. But when you actually get like yanked out the hole and you're standing on fresh ground and in a new place and you're standing in the light and your stress has been switched off, maybe for the first time in your life, peace of mind, possibly for the first time in your life, and you know what it's going to feel like to sleep because you understand how your nervous system works and the ability to switch off your nervous system. And that doesn't need to be the full ice bath, and it doesn't need to be that. It can be, and I would recommend it to anybody, but the first session, just the breath work can be enough. Just the breath work, that sounds really simple. Where we go with the breath work, the journey that I take you on by teaching you how to breathe properly, and then where we go with that intentional breath and the guidance that takes you out of your head, switching off the stress, switching off the world, escaping your reality, for many people, as bad as that is, and then reconnecting back to that divine power that's inside you, understanding what meditation is, experiencing what meditation is. I see miracles every single day. When somebody lies down on that ground and they give me 2.5 to 3 hours of their life, I literally see miracles. I see people losing 10, 15, 20, 30 years literally off them. They look 20 years younger, 30 years younger, inside an hour and a half of breath work and going on that intentional journey. I see the light coming back on in people. I see them remember the power. I can see them remember when they gave it up. I can also see them reconnecting back and taking it back and remembering, because they go before that point. They remember what it was like before life got in the way, before the trauma happened, before they were separated. We go back to that time. And when you take back that power and you stand in that light and you stand in that truth, that divine essence that we carry inside every single one of us, that's the thing that fixes everything. That's the reconnection process. And at that point, the whole world changes. Everything changes. And then the journey begins. The journey begins. We get it up, we identify it, we get it up, and we get it out. You literally get it out your nervous system. You get it out your brain. Those limiting belief systems, those limiting programs, the stuff you've picked up at an unconscious level. 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, it's time to get your own operating systems. So the old computer you picked up, for me, 53 years ago, like, fuck that. Get it away. What's the latest photon computer? What's the latest hyperdrive, newest fuck AI? What is this consciousness? Human consciousness, the divine consciousness we carry inside. That's the software you want to tap into, and doing it intentionally, and doing it consciously, and designing what you need for yourself, and then how that feeds into how you live your life, where you're trying to get to based on, getting out of this and trying to work out things with this and getting back into this guidance system, back into your heart, back into your soul, back into your feelings, back into your emotions, your gut, your instincts. You'll never be wrong. And then the journey begins. When you're in that place, the amount of times I see people standing up, whether it's in here or outside after the ice bath, if they've been in the ice, which is something I never push the ice anymore. I did it for a long time, and you don't need the ice. Ice is great if you've got pain and inflammation, or if you're proper mental, if you've got massive stress and you want to switch off. PTSD, get into the ice, go for it. You're basically dealing with massive pain and inflammation, like chronic inflammation, and you're in agony because of, the pain you're in. Get in the ice, get up to your neck in ice every single day, sometimes twice a day, magic. But for most people, it's too much, it's too hard. And you don't need it. It puts people off, So even myself recently, I use the ice maybe twice a week now, maybe sometimes once a week, because I don't need it anymore. What I'm getting from my spiritual journey, the age and stage that I'm at now, I've went from being that athlete and warrior over the last wee bit. I got a good run at it, but I'm definitely slowing down now and getting into a different kind of phase in my life. So I don't need the ice the way that I did when I was 45, 46. And still training in martial arts and still training 30 hours a week, and probably still thought I was a boy even though I wasn't, and my body was breaking because of it, the inflammation in my body. So it's depends on what you need, but I see people standing up after they let it all go, they get it up and they get it out, and then it's the replacing, then it's when the stress and the tension and the inflammation is gone, when all the nooks and crannies have been emptied out and you've been rinsed out, and it's all gone. The trauma's been released from the body, from the nervous system, and it's gone. You've let it go. Literally, it's away. Then we bring in the divine light. That's where it goes from personal development and that from survival to thrival, in that lower self. But then you start to introduce, the spiritual stuff. You start to introduce, the higher levels of consciousness, the real stuff, the real, the light of the divine. That's how else do you put it? The intelligence of the heart connecting to the intelligence of God. Connecting into the field. connecting into the way, the truth, the light of, this field of consciousness, this quantum field that we're in right here and right now, that we're absolutely part of, and it is part of us and we are part of it. I am in the Father is in me, that's literal. So this like coexistence of this field of consciousness, when you start to understand how that goes together, then it's not about being okay with something and living with it and kind of making your way through life and it's still there but you can't quite like get beyond it. Like, fuck that. The massive shift in consciousness, the transcendence of the old self and the limiting beliefs by a new experience, by a massive shift in, what you experience in terms of, through the power of awareness and the realisation of different ways of living and being. When your consciousness shifts, the whole world changes. I remember asking one of my teachers, the last time I took drugs was 1996, when I was 24 years old. And I remember asking one of my teachers, like way down the line, probably 15 years after it, I had this worry that I was going to get back to it. I was like, would I ever, in the right situation, would I ever go and get dragged towards the dark side of the force again? And he stopped me dead in my tracks and he said, your consciousness has shifted too much. You will never go back there ever again. And as soon as he said that, I was like, fucking right on. Right, I was a different being. I wasn't that guy anymore. That's one of the things with addiction and the way that I help people transcend it. Addiction's easy. It takes 3 days to get past any addiction. We need to replace it with a different frequency, a different vibration, a shift in consciousness, and then you're not that person anymore. But if you're still stuck in their rooms, if you're still telling the same fucking stories, if you're still listening to all that low level, fucking woe is me, this is who I used to be, that level of consciousness, then you can't get beyond it. It's like the crabs in the pot. Was it Wayne Dyer used to say when they catch a crab, they put the crab in the pot and they close the lid on the pot for the first crab. The minute they catch the second crab, they take the lid off the pot and there's 2 crabs in the pot. So if one crab tries to escape, the other crab pulls it back in. And that's kind of what it's like. That's what that level of consciousness is like. There's no transcendence with it. You don't ever get beyond it. And you're basically stuck in that pot in the meetings for the rest of your life, unless, there's a massive shift and you're able to get beyond it. And that's real freedom. Freedom is you don't need to go and be in the meetings ever again. Freedom is you get to, stay in the light and live in the light and you shift yourself in a way that you're not that type of person anymore. That's real freedom. So obviously that's exciting. So from the personal development, and that's what the programme is. That's what the programme is. It's as a starter for 10. It's the reset and reconnect is a starter for 10. That's your beginning. The remembering of the power that's inside of you, the understanding of the tools and the techniques and what it is I'm actually talking about. So there's an educational process, and then through the direct experience of it, then you get to go, okay, it's like linking unknowns to knowns. That's how learning takes place. When you take something and you have no idea what I'm talking about, but then, with me explaining it a wee bit, then giving the experience of it, then you know what I'm talking about. And then we're on a similar page. And then the journey really begins. And that's where, once the first one-on-one is done, once you've had that reset and reconnect, that might be enough. Again, depends how far you want to take it. If you're there to fulfill your life's potential, if you want to reach that place, that nirvana of enlightenment and God realisation, then the journey's just beginning, because it's like, that version's dead. They're done and dusted, they're gone. Thanks very much for everything that they've done up to this point. But this new being that's born, literally reborn on that day, from that point forward, then it becomes exciting. And then it's from survival, literally to thrival. It's from the darkness to light. That's why my story is darkness to light. Doesn't matter where you've been. Ask myself where I was in those low levels of just horribleness. And then the journey out of that, out of the pit, out of the fucking literal depths of hell, and then seeing the light, being aware of the light, and then being drawn towards the light, and then making my way towards the light, and then eventually becoming the light. That's what enlightenment is, the direct experience of that divinity. You literally become it. You know the power that's inside of you, because it's inside every single one of us. So that's where, once it's finished, the option then is, the spiritual journey. The programme itself is the basic fundamentals. That's the starter for 10. That's the lower self. That's managing your state during the day. That's how you sleep, how you eat. All the stuff I've mentioned. That's your basically how you live your life. And everybody's different. But depends how bad you want it. Again, it's mastery of that lower self. So you can feel good at all times. So you can be happy and joyful and confidently move forward every single day in pursuit of your dreams and your goals. Not with motivation, but with inspiration, with feeling good and being genuinely happy and genuinely joyful in an easy way that's actually really kind of quite simple to sustain. It should never feel like hard work. This stuff, these tools and techniques should always feel easy. Last night I had a realisation of the way that I'm trying to do it in certain ways is too hard. It's too difficult. It's like, stop. This inspiration, being in spirit should be easy. This should be fun. and light-hearted. The minute it becomes effort, then I need to stop. And I find myself, with the best intentions, I get caught up in it so often, and it becomes hard work. And I remember, nah, that isn't what this is. This way, the way of living, this natural way of living, in alignment with Mother Nature and the elements and the natural path, it should always be easy. It should always feel good. And the second it doesn't feel good, then it's time to stop and back off. So the work that we teach, the different lessons within the programme, that's a system for living your life. Everything matters. Sleep is absolutely huge. How you sleep at night time, how you breathe during the night, what you take to bed at night time, what you're thinking about when you go to sleep, how you dream, the recent stuff that's been coming through me in terms of what I'm thinking about just before I drift off to sleep, where I'm literally asking the divine for guidance, and I'm asking for help in some ways, but I'm also asking for, what should I do? What else can I do to help? That's what I take to bed every single night. And I tell you what, be careful what you ask for, because the stuff that's coming through, in so many different levels, there's been so much healing coming through, stuff that I didn't know need healed, stuff that's coming up, and I'm actually literally getting to heal it in my dream. I'm reliving these experiences in my dream and finding different perspectives inside my dream, and when I'm waking up, I'm realising that I've let it go and the healing is taking place. Now, whether that's God doing that for me, I don't know, but there's something going on. Maybe it's my intention to find relief, but it's happening with things that I didn't even know were in there. Situations and stuff that happened, some of them 40 years ago, 45 years ago, that I had no idea they were even an issue. And I'm having these dreams, these epic battles sometimes, where I'm waking up in the morning time and I'm I had a nightmare the other night, and I was I woke up, felt as if I'd been to war, and I was in a literal war. It was felt like World War III, but I came through it, and I was in a real life situation, these really vivid real dreams, and when I came through it, I was oh my God, I could see straight away the healing that had taken place, and it's a pain in the arse because I can't mind them. Once I get up and I'm in my meditation, you try to relive them and get all the different lessons, but it's I've got it at some unconscious level, and that's all happened by how I'm going to bed, what I'm thinking about when I'm going to bed. That best day ever starts the night before. I don't wait till I wake up in the morning time to see how it goes. Mouth tape is on, breathing with function, breathing with intention, bed at the right time, which has been a wee bit later recently because of the live meditations every single night. And I'm sleeping longer in the morning time, but the healing is taking place. I'm sleeping now, I believe, I'm catching up for the last probably 45 years, sleeping. Since that vaccine went into my arm when I was 13, so what's that, 40 years ago, my immune system has been hyper-stimulated. I've been in a constant state of chronic stress my whole life. That affected my overactive mind, affected my sleep, affected my recovery, affected me in so many negative ways. So now, because of the programme I'm on myself, I'm on my own programme, and I'm really tending to myself. All the stimulants in terms of even caffeine and black tea, it's been gone for 6 months now. It's all gone. Everything that was basically holding me back, or I was using to prop myself up, I took them all away and went completely natural, full God as I call it. And now the sleep that I'm getting, oh my God, from 10:15 last night to 5 to 6 this morning, which that's a week's worth of sleep for me back in the day. So the fact that I'm getting that, and that's happening because of the processes and the work that I'm putting into myself constantly. It's full-time. It's a full-time job for me. It has been for a wee while now, but the benefits that I'm getting and how switched on I am all the time in terms of for the work, and for this mission, and the ability to what I'm doing with the work and how I'm helping people and the work that's coming through me, that's the choice. That's the choice that I'm making, and I'm absolutely loving it. So there's so many different bits to it. How you wake up, how you breathe, the meditations, which is live every morning. I'm hosting a live meditation 7 days a week, more or less. It was 6 days last week, but it's every single day, give or take. And then how you conduct yourself during the day. And many times I'll say it, your life is your greatest teacher. What you're doing in your day-to-day life, and then the feedback loop of how you're feeling during that experience. So what you're getting from it, what's life presenting to you. Life is the greatest mirror. How it's manifesting for you, what you're actually producing in your life, the people around about you, how they're behaving, how they're reacting, how they're responding. That's a direct reflection of yourself. So everything matters with this work, and that's what the programme is. The community within the programme is unbelievable. The people within it, God bless you. So thank you so much from my heart. I'm so grateful for every single one of you. It's fascinating who it attracts. It's fascinating the people that are ready to be run about this work. Even the ones that are on it, they kind of fall off it and get back on it. The ones that are in it full time for a period of time and then they disappear a wee bit. And it's just really interesting to watch. But on the whole, the combined intention and the vibration and that consciousness within this community, within the programme, it's second to none. Some of the experiences we're getting within meditations, we are blessed. That's all I can really say about it. I think about worldwide, and the groups that are out there worldwide that are in these meditations twice a day, every single day, and the shared experiences, the co-joined experiences that we are getting within the field of consciousness, and the benefit that's making to the world. I know that. Hawkins talks about it often, that power versus force. Somebody sitting with divine love in their heart before you even connect to God. And there's a squad of us doing that every single day, and the counterbalance effect of that light in the world, absolutely, that makes a difference. Of course it does. So the program itself, the videos, the lessons, the online community, the app, we've got an app now which is magic, the live meditations, the inspiration that's coming through that, the guidance from myself in terms of being in that group and being active in that group every single day, and other teachers as well. We've got Qigong in it, thanks to Sasha. There's videos, Qigong. There's a whole series of again, the ancient ways. There's so many things you can do. And I was speaking to Fern earlier on today, and she was talking about how all these things that we teach, they're basically for free once you understand it. The breath work is for free, sleeping properly is for free, how you eat, eating with intention, breathing with intention, thinking with intention, being aware, the intentional life is what the program is. That stuff's all free. It's just a way you need to learn it, how to live your life, so you can start to feel good and be happy and get the most from your life. So that's really what the program is. The program is fantastic. In the start is to master the lower self, and then as you evolve and get up through it, it's a spiritual community. It is, at a certain level, it's all about the spiritual path. Everything I'm doing within this work is to help people reconnect back to God. That's what I'm doing, and that divinity, and that God word is to help them reconnect back to themselves, their true self, their authentic self. When my good friend said during about learning how to become a human being, which means learning who the self is, and that's what the spiritual journey is. It's about the definition of what the self is, the acknowledgement of the self, and then the direct experience of that divinity of the true self. That's the other side to the program, to experience all that you are, to remember all that you are. Enlightenment is the plan. To experience enlightenment, that's available to anybody, and there's many people within the program now who have experienced enlightenment, and enlightenment just means the direct experience of the divinity that's inside you, and it's inside everybody. If it's inside me, it's inside you as well. And my skill set, my gift to the world is basically teaching people how to reach that. And why should you do that? What's the reasons for doing that? Well, when you do that, then nothing else matters. That's the goal of this lifetime, to experience God, before you die, to lose your fear of dying, to find a joy and a passion and an inspiration for living. That's surely what it's all about. But if you're stuck in survival, if you're stuck in the circus, if you're in that survival state, and that stress-activated state your whole life, and you're eating the wrong things, and you're spending time with the wrong people, and you're doing the wrong things to your body and your mind and your spirit, then that separation process that takes place, that's where most people are, and that's where this is so difficult for people. It's too far away. It's almost like they can't hear it. They don't know what it is, and they think it's madness because they're so far. They're kind of stuck and they're trapped in the zoo. They're in that bear trap in the zoo, of addiction and the ego and all the lower self, all the stuff that basically it's there to attract you. So it's like the loaves and the bread and the loaves. The Circus Maximus in Rome. Keep them entertained, keep feeding them full of shite and giving them stuff that basically occupies the ego, which is what the world is just now. It's a complete distraction. The whole thing, the entire circus, everything that you see is just a distraction. It's hilarious to watch. It's almost comical to me how ridiculous it is, and also tragic at the same time it's happening in the world. But that's where they've got us. That's where they've basically tricked us with this information age. Stuck in our heads, stuck in stress, stuck in trauma, stuck in addiction, stuck with debt and fears and worries and feelings of lack. That's all done by design, and that's something that absolutely needs to change. And that's what this is. That's what this program is. It's to know the self, and it's to start living from that place. And being in the light, understanding what God is. My job is to normalise God and give people the experience of what God actually is, and to know that it's inside of you. And once you know that, there's nothing can come your way, and that's why it's so significant and it's so important, and it's a bit that's missing. So the intention is to bring it to the world every single day. It never stops. So really blessed to have this in my life. Where I would be without it, I have no idea. I did a wee video yesterday, and I was talking a wee bit about how the kind of how people get through their life without an internal practice, how people get through their life without the ability to switch off their head and switch off their stress and sleep properly and no worry. And, you know, that's before you even get to the meditation stuff. And I mean, my wish for everybody is to experience what I'm getting just now every single day in meditation, especially on the groups. The live meditations that are every single night just now, the reconnection, the daily reconnection. We're into the second week for July. The start of the second week was last night, and the shared experiences that are happening within that group, that sacred space meditation, is so powerful in so many ways. My wish is for everybody to experience that, to reconnect back to that level of consciousness, to feel what it feels like to have unconditional love in your heart, to know the way, to understand the way, to know what the way is, to know what I even mean by that, and then to experience it and then to become it, to become that field of consciousness. And that happens in meditation, you know. So I'm excited to see how that goes. That's been second week now. It's going to be every single night for the rest of the month. That's just been an absolute gift. The only night it's not going to be is the 25th of July, I think, because that's the night I'm in the yoga barn in Glasgow. First yoga barn was fantastic. It's sold out. The second one is now up and live. So every Friday, last Friday and every month, for the next couple of months I've booked it, just to see how it goes. We've just released the new date, 25th of July. And that night, I mean, again, there was probably 7 or 8 programme members there. Many of them have experienced enlightenment. So you get enough of us in the one room, in the one space, sitting in meditation together. And the collective consciousness, people are on about that. You're going to get something. Even if you just come in and sat. There's a great story Wayne Dyer taught me where he said if he was to sit in meditation, so if I sat here in meditation and you were in the room next door and you did nothing, and they took your bloods before and after it, then your serotonin levels and your melatonin levels and the kind of good stress hormones would be elevated just by me sitting in meditation. So the impact I would have within your chemistry, within your body, would be scientifically provable just by me being in meditation. So the yoga barn, when we're sitting, a group of us together that do this every single day, and that divine light and the grace and the goodness that's God's coming through us, you know, that inspiration to be in spirit, and the combined like vortex that creates, to bring new people into that, I mean, what a gift. If you're looking for healing, you're looking for answers, you're looking for relief, the 25th of July would be a good place to start, to experience what it is we're doing. You learn how to breathe properly, you learn how to switch off your stress, you learn how to sleep, you'll experience peace of mind, and then you'll experience that intelligence of the heart, full heart coherence meditation, and you will experience the divine because you carry it inside of you. And I've worked out through my own practices and sharing with other people now how to do that, you know, so it's guaranteed you're going to get it. And that's just a wonderful night, you know. And then the programme's live again, which is fantastic. Really grateful for that. We're now back up and live. Anybody that's interested in the programme, it's not for everybody. It's intentional living, the art of intentional living. It's everything that I've just spoke about, personal development, from survival, personal survival to personal development, and then from survival to thrival, you know, like really getting it for yourself, getting happy, being joyful, and then the spiritual side of that as well. That's what the programme is. Live meditations every day, all the lessons, all the kind of, you know, the different recordings over the last 18 months. There's hundreds of them. You know, there's all different types of, you know, lessons and bits for everybody, whether you want to switch on your nervous system, whether you want to turn it off and you want to go to sleep, whether you want to upregulate. There's so many different things, you know. So there's loads of good stuff going on just now. Blessed with the community, what you guys are doing, really grateful. And as always, you know, all focus on the way, for the love and the light and the grace that is God, the goodness of the divine, the truth, the light, the answers, the solution. That's what it's all about. That's what we're doing. It's to bring this into the world and help those who are seeking, not to give it to anybody. There's too many people already lost and are never going to get this, and that's okay. That's not my job and it's not my work. My offer and my job is to offer this, is to basically shine the light. And for those who are interested in it, anybody who is attracted and looking for answers and looking for a different way of living and being, there are other ways, but this one absolutely works. We know that. We see it every single day, and it happens very quickly. So, number 53, the way to help. Thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in. God bless. Take it easy. Peace out. Hope to see you again next week, and bye for now.